The kingdom of Thornhelm had once been a place of legend, its forests thick with ancient magic, and its people strong under the moon. But for the past year, something had gone wrong. Shifters who had once turned from wolf to human with ease now found themselves trapped, some stuck forever as wolves, others locked in human skin, unable to reach the strength that had always been their birthright. The healers called it the curse, the soldiers called it a disaster, and the young Alpha King, Cale Thornwood, called it a war he was slowly losing. Cale had inherited the throne too soon, after his father died defending the northern border from the Vale Pack, an old rival kingdom that had never stopped hungering for Thornhelm's land. Cale was strong, disciplined, and used to command, but he was only 26, and the weight of a crumbling kingdom rested heavily on his shoulders. He trusted strategy, he trusted strength, he did not trust fate, and he certainly did not trust the old stories about mates that his advisors sometimes whispered about, with a strange kind of hope in their eyes. That was why, when the guards dragged a young woman before his throne one gray morning, accusing her of trespassing near the sealed old grove, Cale expected nothing more than another villager, foolish enough to wander where she should not. He was wrong. The moment her eyes met his, something inside his chest turned over violently, like a lock clicking into place after years of rust. The mate bond. He had heard about it his whole life, had been warned about it, had almost hoped it would never come for him. And yet here it was, undeniable, roaring to life in front of his entire court. The woman's name was Wren Ashby. She was an orphan from Thornhelm's poorest border village, raised on old stories instead of noble blood, with no pack rank and no family name that meant anything to the court. She stood before the throne with her chin lifted, refusing to look away even as whispers spread through the hall. She did not know what had just happened between them, not fully, but she felt the pull too, and it frightened her more than the guards on either side of her ever could. Cale's mind raced. A mate was supposed to be a gift, a partner, a source of strength, but all he could think about was vulnerability. An enemy could use her against him. His own court might see her as a weakness in a king who was already struggling to hold his throne together. And there was still the matter of why she had been near the old grove in the first place, a place sealed for generations, said to hold the source of Thornhelm's founding magic. So Cale did the only thing his fear allowed him to do. He said nothing about the bond in front of his court. Instead, he ordered that Wren be held in the North Tower, officially as a prisoner suspected of tampering with forbidden magic, unofficially, as something he could not name even to himself. He told himself it was for the kingdom's safety. He told himself it was temporary. He did not tell himself the truth, which was that he was terrified of what it would mean to claim her, and even more terrified of what it would mean to lose her once he did. Wren was locked away in a small stone room at the top of the tower, with a narrow window, a hard bed, and 2 guards outside her door day and night. At first, she raged against it, pounding on the door, demanding answers no one would give her. But rage could not be sustained forever, in a room with no one to hear it, and slowly, day by day, her anger settled into something colder and quieter. She stopped asking why. She started simply surviving. It was during those long, silent weeks that she noticed something strange. At certain hours of the night, faint lines of golden light seemed to trace themselves across the stone floor of her cell, like veins glowing beneath the surface of the earth. At first, she thought she was losing her mind from isolation. But the lights were consistent, pulsing gently in rhythm, almost like a heartbeat. She began to trace them with a piece of charcoal she had found, mapping their patterns on the wall without fully understanding why. It was the only thing that made the days bearable, this quiet mystery humming beneath her feet. Down below, in the castle proper, Cale was drowning in reports of failure. Scouts confirmed that the Vale Pack was massing near the border, sensing Thornhelm's weakness. Scholars pored over ancient texts, searching for the source of the curse, and finding nothing but fragments and riddles about bloodlines lost to time. Cale barely slept. He told himself he was too busy to think about the woman locked in his tower. But some nights, he found himself standing outside her door anyway, listening to the silence on the other side, unable to make himself go in. It was one of the guards who finally brought him the strange report. "Lights," he said, "beneath the North Tower, golden lines in the stone, glowing at night, Ever since the prisoner had been brought there, some of the guards were frightened, whispering about curses and witchcraft. Kale, who had spent weeks avoiding this exact confrontation, knew he could avoid it no longer. He climbed the tower stairs himself that night, dismissing the guards at the door. When he stepped inside, he found Ren sitting calmly on the floor, sketching lines of light onto the stone wall with steady, careful strokes, as though she had done this 100 times before. She did not look afraid. She looked focused, almost peaceful, in a way that startled him more than anger would have. She glanced up at him, unimpressed by his crown or his title. "You finally came," she said simply, not as an accusation, but as an observation. Kale found himself unable to answer right away. He looked instead at the wall, at the intricate map of light she had drawn, lines that pulsed in patterns matching, he realized with a chill, the old maps of Thornhelm's ley lines, the ancient channels of magic said to run beneath the kingdom since its founding, all but forgotten by everyone except old scholars and older stories. "Do you know what these are?" he finally asked. Ren shook her head slowly. "Not exactly," she admitted, "but they only appear at night, and only when I am here. I think they are answering to me somehow. I do not know why." Kale stayed longer that night than he intended to, watching her work, listening as she described sensations she had felt her whole life but never understood, a pull toward certain places, an ability to sense weakness in the earth the way others sensed weather. She had always hidden it, she admitted, afraid of being called strange, or worse, in a village that already had little patience for orphans with nothing to offer. Over the following days, Kale brought scholars to examine her sketches, and what they found stunned the entire court. The patterns matched, almost exactly, descriptions in the oldest surviving texts of Thornhelm's founding, texts that spoke of a lost bloodline called the Groveborn, wolves said to carry a living connection to the ley lines themselves, capable of channeling the earth's magic directly. The line was believed extinct, wiped out generations ago in a war so old most had forgotten it happened at all. Kale realized, with a horror that settled deep into his bones, that the curse spreading through his kingdom was not an attack from outside. It was Thornhelm's own founding magic, weakening from neglect after generations without a Groveborn wolf to tend it, slowly dying and taking the shifter's ability to turn along with it. And the only living Groveborn wolf left in the world was the woman he had locked in a tower out of fear. Shame did not come easily to Kale, but it came now, heavy and undeniable. He had let his fear of vulnerability blind him to the truth standing right in front of him, and in doing so, he had wasted precious weeks while his kingdom weakened, and the Veil Pack grew bolder at the border. Worse, he had done it to his own mate, a woman who had done nothing but exist near a place she did not even understand. He went to her that same night, not as a king issuing orders, but as a man asking forgiveness he was not sure he deserved. He told her everything, the bond, his fear, the reason behind her imprisonment, and what the scholars had discovered about her bloodline. He told her the kingdom needed her, and that he was sorry it had taken him so long to see what should have been obvious from the moment their eyes first met. Ren listened in silence, her expression unreadable for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady, though not without pain. "You locked me away because you were afraid," she said. "Now you need me, so you are asking nicely. I understand duty, my king. I will help Thornhelm, because its people do not deserve to suffer for your mistakes. But do not confuse my help with forgiveness. Those are not the same thing." Kale accepted this without argument, understanding that he had earned nothing more yet. He ordered her released immediately, and before the full court, he did what he should have done from the beginning. He named her his mate, publicly, without hiding behind titles or excuses. The court murmured in shock, but no one dared question their king, not with the Veil Pack's forces gathering closer with each passing day. Together, Ren and Kale descended into the old grove, the sealed heart of Thornhelm's ancient magic, a place no one had entered in generations. The air inside felt heavy with old power. Roots and stone intertwined around a great hollow at the center, dark and silent, waiting. The scholars had found one more piece of the old texts, a warning, as much as an instruction. The ley lines could only be reopened through a bond between a Groveborn wolf and one bound to her by fate, a binding of blood and choice together. Kael would have to surrender control completely, trusting Ren with a part of himself he had never given to anyone. For a man who had built his entire reign on control, this was its own kind of battle. As the ritual began, golden light rising slowly from the hollow at the center of the grove, the ground outside the castle walls shook with the sound of horns and battle cries. The Veil Pack had breached the outer wall, sensing weakness and choosing this moment to strike. A messenger burst into the grove, breathless, begging Kael to return and lead the defense himself, as a king always had. Kael stood frozen for one long moment, torn between the duty he had always known and the woman kneeling beside the rising light, her hands trembling with the effort of holding the ritual together alone. He thought of every year he had spent believing that strength meant standing apart from everyone, that a king who needed no one was a king who could never be broken. He knelt beside Ren instead, taking her hands in his. "I choose this," he said quietly. "I choose you, and I choose my kingdom, together. Not one over the other." The bond between them surged as their hands joined, gold light exploding outward from the hollow of the grove and racing outward through the earth, like blood returning to a body long numb. Across Thornhelm, shifters who had been trapped in human form suddenly felt their wolves stir again, joyful and strong. Those trapped as wolves felt human awareness flood back, whole and clear. The ground itself seemed to answer the call, ancient roots rising along the outer wall, tangling around the invading Veil Pack's forces, slowing their advance long enough for Thornhelm's warriors, restored and fierce, to drive them back beyond the border. By dawn, the battle was won, and the curse was broken. In the days that followed, as the kingdom began to heal, Kael called the entire court together once more. This time, he did not simply name Ren his mate. He knelt before her, in front of every noble and soldier who had once doubted her, and asked for her forgiveness. Not as a king performing duty, but as a man who had finally understood what he had almost lost through his own fear. Ren looked at him for a long moment, remembering the cold stone room, the locked door, and the golden lines of light that had kept her company when no one else would. She remembered his shame, and his choice at the edge of battle to stay by her side rather than ride away. Forgiveness did not erase what had happened, but it could still grow from it, slowly, honestly. "I accept," she said finally, "not because you are my king, but because you finally saw me as your equal, not your prisoner." Kael rose and named her Queen of Thornhelm in her own right, grove-born by blood and chosen by fate, standing not behind him, but beside him. The kingdom that had once nearly fallen to fear and pride now stood stronger than it had in generations, its founding magic restored, its people whole again, all because a locked door had finally been opened, and a king had finally learned to trust the very thing he had once feared most.